Who's next? Yeah, come on up. So I gotta keep rolling along here.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
What's your name?
My name is Katie. I am a native to Georgia. I am an ESFP. So I'm sort of the opposite from a lot of the presenters. And whereas I appreciate their comments, I almost have an opposite problem, if that makes sense. My husband is an ENTP, so I really relate to
Congratulations.
Antonia. Yes. I'm an ESFP. We are actually in a really good place in our lives. We both have our own businesses and professional services. We have the house we want, the life we want. We've worked hard to get there. But being EPs, we tend to be chaotic. And so I know we were talking about stability and how the chaos scares other people. We tend to surf that chaos, if that makes sense. And we love it. And it does very well for us in our lives. And it's exciting. And I love my life. The issue is, you were talking about the Pygmalion Project, and I really appreciate that because we have children. And of course, when you have children, that becomes your number one priority in life. And I want my children to be just like you said with yours. I want them to be them. And I think we have the lack of grounding in our home. And I always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, am I doing damage to my children, or am I giving them opportunities and giving them the life they want? And I think every mother sort of struggles with this.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be the Mr. Higgins in My Fair Lady where she's selling flowers, but I don't want to be the doctor where she's the belle of the ball. I want my child to be who they are. And so that's sort of my question is, how do you foster authenticity and who your child truly is, but also by maintaining who I am as well. So I don't want to lose myself in motherhood. Yes.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Yeah.
And I wish more parents asked these questions.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You're thinking about this. Your kids will probably thank you as they get older. I think it's good on you.
Yeah. How many children do you have?
We have 2 children.
2.
How old are they?
They are 7 and 5. And so their personalities are really starting to just show and who they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to type children. It really is.
Yes.
So first of all, just knowing personality types are a thing already puts you ahead of most other people. Because what ends up happening is, I call it our egos want to take a ride with our genes. Right. So we have children and we pass along our genes and our egos are like, well, maybe I can get in there too. Right. And so we craft this childhood experience that's almost identical to ours. Right. And we make it so that they have all our same experiences and then they have different responses. And we're like, no, you're supposed to respond this way because that's how I responded. Right. And so we can't help but just kind of want to program ourselves into our kids. And one of the things that personality type does, particularly if you go, oh, you mean I have permission to be myself? It helps us give other people permission to be themselves as well. So just knowing it exists at all means you're going to be more sensitive to your children being different from you.
Yes.
Right? Having their own unique needs that are different from your needs. The need to have different experiences from yours, right? The need to be authentic in a way that's different than whatever authentic means for you.
Right.
Just that awareness already sets you apart from most other parents, right? It already gives you a leg up. And then if you get more specific, like I'm observing my kid and they seem to be going to their room a lot and right, they seem to be escaping humans as opposed to moving towards them.
Yes.
That's really interesting. Maybe alone time is a need of theirs. So maybe I should respect and honor that, right? Like the house is chaotic, but there is a sanctuary for alone time. Right. Or it seems to me that theirs is the only one that has a clean room and look at how everything is ordered and they're 5 years old, but they're still hanging up all of their clothes and they seem to be color coordinated. Okay. So right, it's like, perhaps I have a little budding judger on my hands. Right. And so, yeah, you're like, no, yes, maybe.
But the introvert, yes, my son does. He goes to his room and he just wants to play with his Legos. And I'm like, I feel like I need to interact with him because I'm an SE. So I'm like, we have to go experience and do something to bond. But no, he just wants to play with his Legos. And that's hard for me because I feel like I'm not doing what I need to do. And I'm inserting my ego maybe.
Yeah. Well, and we all do it. So it's like, it's a very human thing to do, right? It's very natural. And so being sensitive to those and knowing what they means that you don't have to change your entire household. I mean, kids are resilient and we all grew up in a household that maybe wasn't exactly the household we needed, right? I'm the only NP in my family. Right. Everybody else was either an NJ or an SP. So I grew up in a very introverted intuition, extroverted sensing household. Right. They didn't really understand my needs. And so what ended up happening is they just kind of let me take care of them on my own. And there was a little bit like, hey, am I not a person here too? But then I grew up and I was like, no, they were just They were just trying to do the best with whatever they were working with.
Right.
And kids are resilient and we usually figure it out. So I grew up in that household and I turned out fine, right? But I mean, like, it's like none of us get the ideal. And in some ways it's kind of good,
Yes.
right? Because it introduces this whole other side. You see people who are the same personality type as their parents, who are the same personality type as their parents. And it's really easy for what's called one-sidedness to show up in that context. And so one-sidedness means that you're doubling down on your first two functions, right? Like that's all you know and that's all you want to do. And you don't ever try to balance yourself out. You never try to find the other side and you never try to like sort of round yourself out. You just go, no, this is how it works. And you just keep doing the same thing over and over. What happens when you grow up in a context that isn't suited for your personality type is you're sort of forced to visit the other side, right? And from my observation, it's an easier adult experience to find yourself and start building a life that's more authentic to you than to realize that you actually have to get out of your comfort zone and start doing a bunch of other stuff, right? That you just don't want to have to do. So there is something to be said if your children have type preferences very different than yours. What you're doing is you're introducing them to a wider variety of experiences and ways of being. And that's not a bad thing at all. So it's okay. You're not stifling them just because you're a different kind of person. You don't have to completely change your household just because one of your children might be a different type than you and your husband. So I think you're okay. But I just recommend making sure that you have, you give them sanctuary, right? If they are more introverted, they have an introverted sanctuary. If they are more of a judger, you allow them to have control over their room or control over something that makes them feel like, okay, I can relax. If they are like, take for example, maybe any kind of judger type, the thing that they're going to want to know in order to relax, particularly if they have IJ preferences, is what's coming next, all right? So if they start going like, what's going to happen next? Like what's happening this week? And you're like, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out when we get there. Right.
Yes.
They might need a little bit more like, we're probably going to be doing this on Saturday.
Right.
We're probably going to, and what I've noticed about judgers is they're okay if things change. They just want to be able to prepare for the most likely scenario in the future.
Yes.
Right?
And our household is very much an improvised household and we thrive on that. So I think you're right. Absolutely. We need to give them that time to adjust.
Right.
Yes.
So control over their space, a place of sanctuary, a little bit of future pacing. And that might not be bad for you and your husband to do anyway, right? Just to kind of visit the other side.
We could try. We can try. Well, it's hard because we had children later in life. So it's almost like we are set in this way and it's worked for us. And we're like, and kids make you shift gears, so maybe it's not a bad thing, but it's scary at least.
Yeah. And you don't have to like wildly alter everything. Just like kind of try to accommodate a little bit. And then you could even be honest and say, this is what I believe is going to be happening this weekend, but it's subject to change. Right. It might be different, but this is, and I think it's almost more the act of trying to prepare. Right. Because particularly IJ types just want to be able to prepare for what's coming up next. Right. If they can. And they're okay with things changing a little bit and having to be flexible, but they want to feel like they're doing their best to ensure that when they get there, that's not completely out of what they thought was going to happen. So just like a little bit of accommodation. You might end up having two perceiver children and they don't give two craps. They're totally fine with being spontaneous. But if you do notice that one of your children is a little different or has a little bit of different needs, just go, what is like sort of the baseline? What's the, like I mentioned, with the job, INTP preferences, it can't strip you of your nutrients. It can be neutral, but it can't strip you. So what is the minimum viable product that your kid needs, right? In order to not feel like you're stripping them of their nutrients. You're accommodating, you're allowing, you're giving them space for it. And I think if you do that, I don't think you're going to have to really worry about it that much.
Okay. Any tips for just grounding? Because that's obviously just personally and between me and my husband. Is there any other maybe advice you could give just for us? Because like you said, we need to develop it in ourselves. Is there anything that y'all might say work on or?
Yeah. So for having ENTP preferences myself, there is a lot to be said for having certain, well, we don't call them routines as much because we're two perceivers too. So we get it. We're two EPs. Our house is pretty chaotic as well. But we try not to think about things in terms of routines, but rhythms. We try to have rhythms, right? And so it's not like I do this thing at this time. It's more like I have a rhythm of generally in the morning. This is my, these are the things that I'm going to be doing, and these are the things. And so, then it's just a matter, rituals, rhythms. Just trying to be a bit consistent, even knowing that we're going to disrupt our own routines. We know that that's inevitable, but then just doing what we can to try to get back to it. My recommendation is for both of you to get kind of an idea of what your introverted intuition or perspectives 3-year-old in the car model, right? It's the opposite of your sensation. Yeah. It also has needs, right? A part of what we talk about when we say that things are throttles is not just our first 2 functions. Sometimes our lifestyle or family or the people in our lives prevent us from developing our 3rd and 4th function. And that's just as damaging, right? So kind of get an idea of what that part of you needs, play with it, sort of build a relationship to it. In Jungian psychology, they talk about forming a relationship to your 4th function, your 1st and 4th functions. Robert Johnson, who is a Jungian analyst, he wrote a book in the 80s, I think it was called where he said that the relationship between those 2 functions should be like 2 hands pressed together, which I thought was really interesting. It's like an intimate relationship they have with each other, but they're not the same thing. So it's okay for that function to kind of feel a little distant from you, like a little like not you, right? Almost like a partnership, like an actual partnership with your husband. He's not you, but you're so intimate and close, you're like pressed together, but he's not you, right? And so it's when you first begin to integrate that 4th function, that inferior, or what we call the 3-year-old, it's okay to have it feel a little not you, a little distant initially, but you want to create a relationship to it, almost like you're creating a relationship with a friend. So if you had a friend that had INJ preferences, what are the kinds of things they'd be into? What are the things that they would like to do? And then maybe try to play around with it a little bit.
That's a good way to put it. I never thought that. Put my 3rd and 4th as another person who I'm interacting with. I've never thought about it like that. I love that idea.
Yeah. Yes. And so just kind of do activities that you think that they would be interested in. Just play around with it, but don't feel like you have to live there.
Yes.
Just build a relationship to it and see if that alone has a grounding influence.
I love that idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.